with myself, Rachel Patterson, and Pete Roque. I'm joining you here today remotely, so hopefully my connection will be okay. If not, we'll pivot and we'll make it work. So we have an extra special guest, as always, on with us today. A guest who has pulled on my heartstrings, and we have a special connection. So I cannot wait to hear more about what she has to tell us today. And so we'd love to welcome the wonderful Jennifer Morris. She is the Multi-Jurisdictional Cannabis Enforcement Group Coordinator for Riverside County, California. Good morning, Jennifer. How are you today?
I'm great. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
And we love having Jennifer on. One of the, so Jennifer hosts this awesome multi-jurisdictional platform where jurisdictions across California get to talk about their different type of enforcement activities in the world of cannabis. Now, so and some jurisdictions allow it, some prohibit it, and some have, if you have a permit, then you can do stuff. But we have a lot of places that just go off the whim and just destroy everything. So and we get to hear those stories, and these type of meetings, they're excellent because you're hearing different perspectives from different jurisdictions of what they're doing, and sometimes you get to hear other ideas. So so in our city we were super strict. So I'm gonna shut up real quick and let Jennifer talk a little bit about yourself. Before we get started, we always like to hear the origin story, Jennifer. So can you
Okay.
tell us a little bit of how you got into code enforcement?
Okay, great. So I have been an employee of Riverside County since 2003. I grew up, my grandmother was the first court clerk, female court clerk in the state of California, and that was in Riverside County. So as I was growing up, I was really instilled with a very strong value of public servitude and the pride that came with working for Riverside County or any government. My grandfather worked for Food Pantry, which, fed people, especially during the war. And there was just a lot of pride instilled in serving the public. So when I got hired with Riverside County, I was just so excited. I felt a sense of pride that I still feel today, working for the county and being part of something where you can actually serve the public. And I worked in hazardous materials. I was a hazardous material responder for the county of Riverside. Mainly worked with illegal dumping of hazardous chemicals in county landfills, environmental crimes that would occur for Riverside County, those kind of things. And I fell in and saw that the code enforcement department was hiring. And I thought, you know what, that's something I really think that I would like to do. So I applied and I got the job. And I was a code officer, and I worked in an area right outside of Paris, California, in the unincorporated area. And I've been working with them ever since. So I came over in 2007, and I had an opportunity. My department gave me an opportunity, which was just a great opportunity in 2019. They said, "Hey, we want to do a cannabis team." We had a lot of illegal cannabis that was happening in the county. And they said, "What do you think? Would you like to be like the interim supervisor of this cannabis team?" And I was an officer at the time. And I was like, "You mean senior?" And they're like, "No, we mean supervisor." And I was like, "Okay, yeah. My dreams come true. Now I get to do this, something that I was feeling really passionate about at the time. As an officer, I get to take this and I get to make like a program and really, make it my own." And so in 2019, I was the interim, and then I interviewed for it and I got the permanent placement. And now here today in 2022, I'm a supervisor. My department was just awesome. They opened up the board. They went to the board. They said, "Hey, she needs a senior." And so they're giving me a senior officer placement, and I have 3 officers, and we handle the entire unincorporated Riverside County. So we go all the way from San Diego border to Arizona border to the Orange County border. And we did over 800 cases last year, opened and closed. So the team really works hard. It's very dynamic, and it's just I guess if you had asked me, 5 years ago, right now I'm living what my wildest dream was 5 years ago, actually getting to do what I love.
Well, and that's what I wanted to know is, did you come into it thinking, okay, cannabis, want to deal with cannabis, or was this just something that was then given to you and then became your passion?
Well, in 2013 and 2014, I started seeing in the area that I worked that there was a lot of cannabis cultivation that was going on. There would be acres and acres of it. We started out, I think, one year there was like 3 grows. And I said, wow, this is like, isn't this illegal? What's wrong with this? And then the next year there was 100 grows. And then the next year, I couldn't even count how many grows there were. So in 2015, Riverside County passed an ordinance that was the medical marijuana ordinance that said, hey, Riverside County is okay with people growing their medicine if they want to grow their medicine, but here is the limits on what you can actually grow. So in July 2015, since my area had a majority of the illegal cultivations, I was the one that was going out and starting to kind of find my sea legs and find out, what was working and doing enforcement, partnering with law enforcement as much as we could. How can we really take a smaller group of people and, really make a splash that is more, that will bring out more enforcement or more compliance. And also at that time, I had an area that had a large amount of illegal dispensaries. So at that time, Riverside County did not allow dispensaries. And what we were doing was not what had been done before was not really working in getting these dispensaries to stop, operating. So I was then brought in to my supervisor at the time said, hey, I think you're doing a really good job at the cultivation. I'd like to have you come and address these dispensaries. And so I worked with our county council. We did a lot of changing of how things were being done and really became so responsive to, shutting them down that within a year, we were able to shut down all the illegal dispensaries that were in the area that I had. And that's when, at that time, they asked me if I wanted to take it countywide, what I had been doing in my area.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration there. I mean, with everything we do in this industry, as we all know, collaboration is key and it's so important. But it sounds like you had a really good group, between yourself, your team, possibly fire, police. How did that relationship really, come about?
Well, I mean, this is going to sound kind of silly, but it started with somebody believing in me and saying, hey, you can do this. And it took a lot of me just bugging people. Hey, what do you think about this? How about this? I had a little trick that I would use because, county council, they charge you every time you talk to them. They're your attorney. So I would say, hey, do you want to go to lunch? And then me and the attorneys would go to lunch. And then I would say, well, I'm thinking about this. I mean, definitely it was not something that I did alone. County council was really involved. The sheriff's department was really involved. And in the early days when we first started, and then that blossomed to where now I work with the agricultural commissioner. I work with planning and building and safety and all these stakeholders that really have come in and, been able to add ideas, enforcement ideas, and, take it to the next level because, now we're in an era. Riverside County allows cultivation by permit. They allow dispensaries by permit. So the future for us is also, the legal market. And how do we, we're not just there to jam people up. We're also there to make sure that the legal market succeeds so that what the voters and what the county's board of supervisors envisioned is able to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, sorry, Pete, hate to keep taking the mic here, but a good morning to all of our guests as well. And as we all know, Miss Jennifer Morris is so inspirational. We already have a beautiful comment from Miss CC. Just like to read to you real quick. It says Riverside County has a great model program for cannabis enforcement. Jennifer, you are a wealth of knowledge. We're already seeing all of that.
Well, I like to talk about it. So I literally, that's all I talk about. In fact, my
We
husband
do
will
call you
tell
the weed lady. Yes.
Yeah. My husband will tell you that that's all I talk about all the time. And I'm lucky because now I have a team. And so when we're all together, that's all we talk about.
Yeah, it's refreshing. I mean, you see people that love what they do all over the place, but getting to be face to face with you, it's just inspirational. It's refreshing, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Thank you. I really do. I really do enjoy, being able to make a difference and help the communities, and there are communities in Riverside County that have really, suffered due to the illegal cannabis trade, groundwater loss, wells going dry, crime. So it's something that I, am really passionate about. You can do it. You just need that permit.
One of the things that me and Cecilia actually joined, the multi-jurisdictional roundtable that you host. So for those that don't know, Jennifer does host a multi-jurisdictional forum where we discuss everything weed, and we're seeing what different cities are doing, and the new tools that they're using, and Jennifer's been very, very influential in that market. I mean, we're able to like say, hey, this is working for our city, why don't we try it here, we try it there. And it's just just bringing jurisdictions together is a task within itself. Have to corral everybody, and then not only that, but she also, people in our industry get to share, like in a presentation, what they're doing and give us the lowdown on how the steps by steps on shutting some of these illegal dispensaries down. Because with when it comes to weed, you're also looking at illegal alterations and in structures. You have a lot of irrigation next to open electricity, which creates a crazy fire hazards. You have mold, like when I was before the conversation started here, we were talking about my trip to Colorado, how the housing market was decimated because people were buying these homes, converting them to weed grows, and then mold just was all over the place, where it was nearly impossible to rehab those places. So, and not only that, but it's dangerous, like doing this type of enforcement danger, because there's a criminal element. Sometimes you run into more than just weed. Sometimes you have honey oil labs, you have you have all this crazy stuff. Now for those that don't know what honey oil is, can you tell us a little bit about honey oil?
Well, honey oil is what they do. They extract the THC using volatile compounds. Sometimes they use propane with a closed loop system. Sometimes they use butane. And the problem is that large amounts of it, it's heavier than air, and it can create an explosion hazard. It's actually the same felony charge, and I don't know the exact penal code number, but it is the same felony charge as a meth lab. So if someone is extracting, making concentrated cannabis or honey oil, they call it sometimes wax, sometimes shatter. It just comes in different forms. If they're doing that and they have the three elements, which is the product, the shake, the extraction device, and the actual explosion hazard, which could be the butane, it is a felony, and law enforcement can actually charge them with the same penal code that they do when they have a honey or a meth lab. So it is something we see them quite often, but typically those are kind of housed a little differently, and I would say that they're very secreted away. So they're not as open as when you see an open cannabis grow or a cannabis grow that's in a greenhouse that I might be able to from the road say, hey, they're growing cannabis there. So I do see them on occasion. You more often will stumble into them as you are there with either law enforcement or yourself. And it's kind of one of those things, if you're by yourself, you ignore. You ignore until you leave the property, and then you might say, hey, I saw this, it's not something we want to like talk to them about, or it's just, blinders, play dumb. I didn't see a thing. And then let law enforcement handle it on a warrant of some kind.
Yeah, and doing what you're doing, there's a lot of officer safety concerns. I mean, because there's that criminal element, because you never know who's actually part of that weed grow. In California, Riverside County has a lot of open space, so you have these like masses of land with a lot of cannabis. Where when you're serving a small city like a 6 mile city, you're not going to see that. So the enforcement and training, it's different for you might see pot farms. You see helicopters. Some of them are cartel run. So so what are some of the officer safety issues that you deal with when it comes to cannabis?
Well, I mean, certainly many of the grows are protected, especially as they get close to harvest. We're talking up to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cannabis that's there. There are robberies that occur. Our model has been we try to get that low hanging fruit. We really, we are the sneaky team. And I'm not going to go into how we sneak around, but we do sneak around. I have flown with the sheriff's department. I've flown with the National Guard. I will beg, borrow, and plead to get a flight over. And when I'm there, I'm taking pictures. I'm going to take pictures of as much as I can. We're going to look eventually into possibly being able to use drones. My county is my manager, my division manager. He's really looking into this, and I know that some jurisdictions are using it under very strict circumstances. Flying from just the road right away. Not flying over, and so that's something we're definitely looking at legally wise. Is that something we can do? We have developed ways. We leave notices at the property. There are some areas where, yes, the officers do the knock and talk, because a lot of the growers will go to a mom and pop property and they're like, hey, I'd like to grow my plants in the backyard. And the property owners are like, well, they're going to pay me whatever they pay them, $1,000 or however much. And it seems like a good deal to them. And those are people we really want to educate. They're a victim sometimes just as much as the community. So we really try to make sure that we are staying safe. With the officers all wear load bearing vests when they're out there, to make sure that they're safe. They have they use radios, and they also know that there is nothing there that they have to get. And so if they can't see it and they just can't safely do it, we have a lot of friends in law enforcement and they love referrals. So we refer to them, they refer to us. And we have really developed a very large network of team players that we have here in Riverside County. So if one of us can't address something, there's definitely another stakeholder that can.
That's awesome. It sounds like, that leads into my next question, actually. You guys have a really buttoned up package here in Riverside County. It sounds like you work really well as a team. We have a comment from Mr. Jack Applegate. Good morning, sir. It says, this is a huge battle in Southern Oregon. What would you suggest for, someone who has a comment like that, where, how do we get that collaboration and that teamwork to go in and really look at these type of issues and be able to mitigate them in the best possible manner?
Well, I was super excited when I saw Mr. Applegate's comment there,
right?
because in November, I actually went up into Oregon to see a family member, but I made it my mission to stop at a few places and talk to jurisdictions. Up at the border, Siskiyou County, which is right there at California, and I've read some articles about what Southern Oregon is going through. And I was like, hey, I'm wondering if what we're doing, because I know that Southern Oregon is having a lot of problems with registered hemp farmers growing clandestine cannabis under their hemp registration, because you can't look at a plant and tell if it's cannabis or hemp, because the only thing that makes them different, they're both cannabis plants, is the amount of THC. What makes it hemp is it has less than in California, 0.3% THC. If it's between 0.3 and 1%, now it's hot hemp. It's technically not like a recreational grade cannabis, but it's still too high to be considered hemp. So I know that I read an article that they were having a lot of problems with this. And this is something that we in Riverside County have started to address using a multi-agency approach with the district attorney's office, with the agricultural commissioner. And we actually have developed this thing called a sample warrant, because we can't go in. We don't want to take all of their plants and then have us be responsible if it turns out to be hemp, that we destroyed their hemp crop. It's a legal crop. So we go in with law enforcement with a warrant, and it's a soft warrant at first. We call, hey, registrant, hey, we're at the front door. We'd like for you to open up so we can test the plants. And then the plants are tested. And if they come over the legal limit, then we come back and destroy them, or they've been removed. But what's happening is the district attorney now is starting to use the civil process rather than the criminal process to address these people who are, using a legitimate registration and are using it to hide the fact that they're growing cannabis. Also, the state of California, our Riverside County Agricultural Commissioner, because of what was going on here, they did not have anything that they could revoke these permits from the state. And because of us, what we were finding in our agricultural commissioner pushing it, the state wrote in verbiage to have revocation. So now we revoke them. It's like a one strike, you're out, your registration is revoked.
Is that a better process, have you found?
I think that the civil process is a much better process for cannabis, because especially if you're in a state where it has been basically decriminalized, it takes the morality factor out of it. It becomes just a standard permit or no permit activity. It's a land use violation. And in Riverside County, we use the civil process. We don't use the administrative process. Using the civil process and taking them to court and actually suing them. We hold that property owner accountable. The city of Riverside took it all the way to the Supreme Court that jurisdictions have a right to have what they want in their jurisdictions. And there's a lot of case law that says that you as a property owner are responsible for a nuisance, whether you know it or you don't.
Right.
And law enforcement can't hold a property owner responsible if they can't prove knowledge. And if you have an out-of-state property owner who purchased this property simply for the fact of allowing a cultivation to occur, it's so much better to do civilly, because we put their name down and say, hey, we're able to collect civil penalties, we're able to collect costs and fees, and we get temporary restraining orders with abatements, and our contractor is law enforcement. And when we do that, we're able to recover those abatement costs from the property owner to pay law enforcement. Taxpayers no longer have to pay for law enforcement to take hours with several officers to do the manual labor to remove and destroy the plants.
That's a great process. I mean, it's very similar here, and looking at it from the civil side, the code enforcement side versus the PD side. You're looking at, can you prove that the property owner knew this happened? Well, regardless, the property owner should be and always shall be responsible for what's going on their property. So I think that's a great point that you brought up with civil versus criminal enforcement.
Anywhere that we can support law enforcement and bring what we can bring to the table, it is so important. When I first started this, there was probably law enforcement that did not see our value, and now I really think through the hard work that we've done, through me just kind of being a pest, I want to go out with you. Let me help you. What can I do? I want to help you. I think that they have seen what we can bring to the table.
Right.
And that is always my goal, is to do this with a team effort and interagency effort, and give them, I'm very responsive to law enforcement, and whatever they can do, law enforcement, the environmental health, all of your stakeholders,
Right.
you together can really, really make a difference.
And I think people forget that, we have a different set of authority tools in law enforcement. And same thing with the health department. We all have different tools. And when you put the tool packet together, it's just unstoppable. And, talking to, law enforcement, one of the things at Four Leaf that we do is we get to talk to a lot of cities. And a lot of times the police department, like, they inherit code enforcement. They don't know what to do with them because they really don't understand what code enforcement does. And once we educate them on, what, hey, you guys take care of the bees, we take care of the hive. It just it
Right.
makes sense. It makes sense to them, and they're like, wow, it's kind of like when you look at your remote control, and you have all these buttons, and one day you realize that these buttons do all this cool
Yes.
stuff. Yes, that's code enforcement, and I think just hearing the tools in Riverside County, you running the multi-jurisdictional things, like, for example, when I used to do, enforcement of cannabis, we used the building code. That was our go-to, is like the building code. Hey, it's going to, there's substandard issues. We're red tagging it and then hold the property owner responsible, in an administrative process, not a civil process, but administrative process. And that worked for us because we were very, we don't want it in our city. It's not going to happen. And heavy fines and penalties. Some cities use injunctions, others are using receiverships. There's so many different tools that that different jurisdictions are seeing. So what are some of the tools that you learned about during the your roundtables that you host?
So the roundtables have been really great. Cece did like a presentation on what they're doing up in Oakland for dispensaries. We've talked about San Bernardino County is now starting to do a different process that's like a little bit more administratively, but they've actually developed a cannabis team, code enforcement wise, which is more like our team. We're seeing that cannabis enforcement is so different because cannabis cultivation is different for the area. What happens in Riverside County isn't going to happen in the city of Moreno Valley, or in the city of San Francisco. There's not open space. It's hard for us to do. You can't do a substandard structure on a well-built greenhouse. You can do like an unpermitted construction or an open air grow, which is what we see in our microclimates, like in the high desert. Up in Northern California, they have a lot of open space like we do down here. I've heard them talk about cannabis court. They have cannabis court. Siskiyou County, they were having a water issue where they were actually, running dry. An adult cannabis plant can take up to 6 gallons of water a day, towards the end. They really like water. And so what they started doing is they started doing moratoriums on getting a new well permit put in, just to try to save the groundwater. So everywhere that you grow cannabis, it is grown in such a way that many of the jurisdictions have a very unique way of handling it. And that's why I wanted to start the multi-jurisdiction, because what's working here, I would love to know. There's no sense any of us recreating the wheel. We can really learn from each other. And that learning starts with us communicating. And I had gone to a kind of a round table that was local. It had San Diego County and it had San Bernardino, Riverside County, and several of us. And it was all law enforcement and county council and city attorneys. And it was me and one other code officer. And I thought, wow. And they were talking about code. They were talking about these are code techniques. These are what code, could be doing and should be doing. But I thought code is not sitting at the table. We don't have a place at the table. And it kind of came to me like, I think we need to get a bunch of code officers together and say, what are you doing? And this was at the beginning of the pandemic. I kind of first envisioned it like in a room, but because of Zoom and how the pandemic has kind of changed the way that we have, communicate and we can meet, I was able to get people all the way from Northern California down. And now my next goal is for this next year is I really want to take it nationwide because I want to learn from Colorado. I want to learn from Oregon. I want places where they're just starting to step their foot into the legalization process to maybe be able to learn from us what setbacks did we have? What setbacks did Colorado have? Like you mentioning the housing crisis. These are really important, things that we can learn. And just yesterday, I was talking to another jurisdiction, and they actually said that they have a specific permit, like a rehab permit, when they have a cannabis grow house. And I thought that is amazing because it involves having like an environmental survey done for mold. We don't do anything like that in the county. So I talked with my director, and he talked with the powers that be, and they think it's a good idea. So that's going to be something we're going to try to do. And that will open up the door even more for us to be working with law enforcement, to be there, to make sure that these houses are properly rehabbed so that the next owner, because we know that they'll sell them many times right away, the next owner can go into a house that doesn't have any environmental issues.
Right.
And it is an issue. I mean, I've seen some crazy alterations. I'm pretty sure you've seen some like pretty gnarly stuff yourself. And like the elaborate venting units, and there's electrical theft, water theft. I mean, you see all sorts of crazy things out there. So it's important for jurisdictions to kind of know what they're getting into, and just kind of brings it to another point that cannabis enforcement becomes its own kind of sub enforcement unit, like illegal dumping officer, which you were. That's its own specialist, stormwater inspector, zoning. I mean, there's so many code enforcement. We wear so many hats, we do so many things that we start becoming specialized. For me, I do a grow house here and there, and then go to my next inspection, smelling like cannabis. So I go, hey, what have you guys been doing? I'm like, oh, we just went to a grow. Yeah, I smell sticky,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, so with you guys are just going place to place, cannabis. It's awesome, just to focus on one particular item. It's just amazing.
We're really lucky. I have to say, me myself, so lucky. I have just a great team. The success was from their hard work. They have always worked really hard. Um, we we partner a lot with our other code enforcement officers when we're going into areas. Many times they'll have cases on these properties, and we work really hard to be with them and do whatever we can to partner up to really address all of the problems that are on a property. At first, when we first started doing it, we wanted to try to address everything if there was a cannabis grow, but it became quickly apparent that we just, as a small cannabis team, really had to focus on the cannabis. And we do address greenhouses or indoor grows as much as possible. We have tried to use techniques that, like, we do noticing. We don't have to post it, but I like to post it at the property because it's getting quicker compliance. The way we do it at our level is we give them on the first offense 7 days to remove it. And then if they don't, then we send it to our council, and the council takes them for a preliminary injunction with a removal order. And then after that, if they remove it, great. But if they don't, then I come in and I remove it for the community.
So Jennifer, if I can ask, kind of going off of another one of Mr. Applegate's questions or comments rather, stating that he's seen everything imaginable from serious explosions with the extraction folks that have ignored plans and permits and so on and so forth. I've been in those same situations where the impacts are very different. And with a group like yours, we learn from all of the basic outcomes. And I think that that's really important with what you're doing, is because the impacts are so different in every jurisdiction or different state, to actually come together and talk about what those resolutions were. I know he stated here is now doing that. Those folks are now in prison. Well, I'm working with one right now where they never even got to that point where we even saw them in court because they're sticky, but
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Do you guys focus a lot on, what those resolutions are, understanding how we can learn from that and push that out in your roundtable, if that makes sense?
Yes, yes. I really want to bring a lot of voices in, and we have had people talk from the legal, side, the jurisdictions. We had Desert Hot Springs talk about how they manage their legal process, and it's really great. We're looking for those different resolutions and what worked originally and then stopped working, and how you overcame that and what are you doing now. Everybody's resolution at the end is so valuable, to have it out there. We're very polarized. If you think, I mean, many jurisdictions, we're not talking to each other except in forums like this. And there's so much that we share, commonality that we share, and differences that we share, but we learn from other techniques. Where we were 3 years ago, we're not at the same place now, and there are jurisdictions that are miles beyond where I am now, and I just want to soak up their knowledge. I want to soak up how they got to that point and where they're at now. Like Desert Hot Springs, when we talked about it, we, Riverside County, are just now in the infant stages of having our legal cannabis dispensaries. They're well into it. So I learned so much by seeing what was working for them, and also how they handled those dispensaries that were not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because I think that, it seems overwhelming at first. And what's the plan if they don't do this? And where do we go? And they were my expert now. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. And so the resolution, yes, is very important at the end.
Yeah. Isn't it funny though, when we're creating codes and laws and ordinances, we always kind of resort back to what another jurisdiction's doing, or case law, but not so much in this case. So I love that. I love what you're doing.
It's definitely it gave me an opportunity to every day think outside the box, but that is exhausting. It is exhausting at times. It's exhausting to try to solve problems that come up, and you're like, I don't know if I have it in me to solve this problem again. And that is why discussion, putting it, saying, hey, what do you think? Going to experts, even in my department, and saying, I want to do this. What do you think? Discussing it with your team, discussing it with other jurisdictions. It's so important. That is how all of these ideas, are made. These ideas didn't just come from me. They came from me collaborating and talking and bugging people and saying, what do you think? And trying things that failed. We failed a lot of times. We did things and they didn't work. Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's try this. And then sometimes the growers made me better because they would change things, and I'm like, okay, let's try it this way.
Yeah, one of the things, Jennifer, that we see is this. First of all, I like to say, like, we're not anti-cannabis because it's legal in California. It's
Yes.
just the unsafe practice of growing cannabis that the focus, because it does create another market when it comes to there's jurisdictions that allow cannabis, and folks aren't reporting sales. There's no way to monitor, and cities are losing out on the revenue and taxation that to help fund police efforts and those kind of things for people not following the rules. So this kind of leads to another kind of place where code enforcement is evolving. I mean, we start looking, you're looking at distribution, you're looking at delivery, you're looking
Mhm.
at business licensing. I mean, there's so many things that are coming into play when it comes to cannabis enforcement and in code enforcement, where you need a person. So today's talk was about creating a task force and creating things like that. So we're kind of going back, because I know we talked a lot about cannabis, but you as a person that has created a niche for creating a task force, because you've been asked to help other counties and help other jurisdictions, give them information. I mean, you're a go-to subject matter expert, and that's why we have you here, because we want to share your knowledge with our code viewers. I mean, we have people in politics and watching our program. We have building officials, legislators, and we really want to put the information on the importance of code enforcement tools. Now, when it comes to you doing your when you put your task force together, what was the first thought process, and say, hey, I want to do this. This is something. I mean, because not everybody does that. So, what was it that made you think outside that box?
Well, I think what it was is that I wanted to help, as much as I could, but I also wanted to learn. I was a little selfish. I really felt like there were people out there that could probably give me information and maybe help us tackle some of the things that we were starting to see. And I looked at it as an opportunity to you know make friends and maybe not friends, but you know get professional contacts who were doing the same thing as I felt kind of alone, like it was just me, and I knew there were other people out there doing what I was doing. It's kind of like when you go somewhere and you meet a code officer and they're like, oh, I'm a code officer, and you're like, oh, so am I. Let's talk. Let's be best friends. Did we just become best friends? We did. It's that kind of thing. And I'm actually, Riverside County is one of the only counties we have. The district attorney has a cannabis regulation task force, and I'm the only person on there that's not law enforcement. The rest are law enforcement. I'm the civil arm of it, and all we do is our whole goal is to do unfair business practices. And this is so the legal market can succeed, because what's happening is the illegal market is undercutting and preventing that legal market from succeeding. So we only do unfair business practices. I have nothing against cannabis. I think cannabis has been really good for a lot of places, legal cannabis. And I think that done in a legal fashion where it's safe for the consumer, because it is a process that is ingested and put into the body, I think is great. But it's the unfair business practices, dare I say the tax evasion that occurs, is what we specifically deal with. So I thought, this might be a little controversial, but I thought many times code is kind of treated like the baby sister, the baby brother. You just come in, and we have so much that we can bring to the table. We have tools that no one else has. We have ideas, because what of us as code enforcement, we have to figure out how to do everything with less, how to make that ordinance work, to make a difference for that community, how to bring in resources that maybe aren't there. So we are the problem solvers. We're the people that come in and can take care of stuff. And that's why I see so much value. And I thought it was just important for other code people to know, like, you are valuable in this process. You're not just the little brother, little sister who shows up at the cannabis grow and red tax. You have thoughts and ideas on how to make this process better. Law enforcement is constantly they're just chasing their tail. They're looking, they're trying to find it. What can we do to assist them and to assist the community by bringing a very dynamic approach and bringing our tools to the table? Sure.
You're waving the flag that we wave here on this show, because one of the reasons why we put this out, this kind of show out there, is because we believe that code enforcement is that important. We bring tools all the time that people never thought of. And once we become really, once you have that collaboration with law enforcement, it's just a whole game changer. And a lot of cities don't do that. They just don't have that collaboration. And it's once they learn, we all stay within our lane, but we're driving to the same place. And end of the day, there's nothing controversial about what you said, because every time me and you, we have conversations about code enforcement because we're that dorky. Same thing with Rachel. It's just and I've never gone home any day and then say I hate my job.
No.
The job is what we do. It's an important part of code. We're an important part of the community. And I think over time, when jurisdictions stop seeing code enforcement as a luxury versus a
Mhm.
necessity, that it changes, because now we touch everything: licensing, building, planning, law enforcement. I mean, we touch everything. And folks need to understand that the numbers that code enforcement has isn't as great as the numbers of law enforcement. I've seen jurisdictions with 80,000 people and one code officer to
Yeah.
serve, and that's just you need a lot more staff to help you resolve some of these community issues, or you're just playing whack-a-mole and chasing your tail, like you said. So
Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly why we have, sorry, Jennifer, that's exactly why we have you on the show, like Pete said, because we're trying to provide resources, right? We're trying to get everyone involved in something that we all have such a passion for. So with that, I do want to know, how do we get to be a part of your awesome roundtable?
Well, if you're in California, you can, Pete's going to put my email. You can email me and ask if you can be part of it. We do it about every quarter, once every 3 months, and I have different topics. I'm, uh, I'm always looking for other jurisdictions that want to speak or just talk about what they're doing. You can do that and stay tuned. Hopefully, if I take this nationwide, and it probably won't be every 3 months. It might be once a year or twice a year. We're going to try to promote it as much as we can. Right now, what we've done is basically just word of mouth. I found a code enforcement page on Facebook. We had a bunch of code officers, and I said, hey, would anybody like to join? And people started sending me their emails. And every time I meet a code officer that might have any interest in cannabis, I'm like, would you like to join? Would you like to come and listen to someone talk for, an hour about just cannabis? And we do a lot of really interesting, I think they're interesting, but weird kind of topics like clonal propagation. Like, how do they make clones? How are they making these little baby cannabis plants? What are you seeing? What's a mother plant? This is a mother plant. And when you look at it and, testing of a mother plant, every little kind of crazy thing you might have learned, that's what we discussed and discussed there. And, just kind of bring that random, like, you said, Pete, dorky knowledge that most people wouldn't maybe know, or that I might know. I might not know it. Bring it to me, and that's what we try to bring. So I would love to have anyone that wants to join. And I mean, I probably wouldn't be opposed if somebody was not from California joining in. And yeah, come, we'll talk. You can learn what we're doing here in California and the struggles that we're having.
I love it. All information is useful information.
Yeah.
so my type's not working, so I can't put your email up.
Okay. Well,
But
I'll tell it. If
anybody anybody, they can actually, if you go to pete.roque@outlook.com, you can definitely email me, and it's pretty simple. My name dot roque at outlook.com, and that's my email address. You can send me and I'll forward the information over to Jennifer.
Great. I love
Yeah.
it.
No, and it's also, we want to kind of thank you for some of the stuff that you're doing, because you did. There's an interview with Jennifer for the Women Leaders in Code Enforcement. She was actually one of the people featured this year in our Women Leaders. She attended last year. Hopefully she got some inspiration from
I
women
did.
leaders.
I
And
did. I'll tell you, just a shameless plug for women leaders. It was very life changing for me. Not because of being a woman or anything, but there was a lot of positivity, and it was so professionally handled, and there was a lot of just really empowering messages. And I loved the training. I'm hoping to go to it again virtually this year. And it was very life changing for me when I saw it. I mean, I felt like I could go out and slay a dragon. I just felt so empowered. So it was great, and it was a great platform, and I just loved it. So I'm really thankful to Cece and Rachel and everyone that brought that, you, Pete, that brought that to us. It was something that I don't even think I could have ever imagined. And so to have the vision that you guys had to bring it, it was just great for its first one. It was awesome.
Well, we can't wait to see your interview.
yeah, and then just stepping it up. I mean, this year we have a couple of the people that we interviewed last year, like Rachel, teaching an awesome class on customer service. If that's her motto, is customer service. Treat people with dignity and respect. That is her jam. So my jam is social media. That's me. Your jam is cannabis, and we had Lorena, where her jam is accessibility, and we bring these things so people understand what it is that we're doing. When we talk about cannabis, somebody taking a class might not know, like you said, like what a mother plant is or what it is. All I know is when I go to a cannabis place and it's super potent and I'm sticky, I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
that was some good cannabis. I don't know what it is, but I'm sticky. So,
Yes. Oh, that stickiness is my life story.
you know,
My
and
whole house can smell at times, and the washing machine, and sometimes I send my son off to school and I smell him and I'm like, oh, you smell like cannabis. Oh well, go to school, you'll be okay. you know
you come out, you're like, wow, they're the cannabis smelling people.
yeah, you smell like a skunk. It's very skunky. It's very skunky, but I've become so used to it. And there's a lot of people that they don't like the smell, of course. And but it kind of becomes your life. And yeah, you just I can say that that both of your expertise, Rachel, your heartfelt thing about customer service is something that's really close to my heart. We may be dealing with, this is something I tell my team, you may be dealing with criminals, but we're going to treat them like decent human beings. And that's really what our law enforcement, they do not treat people bad. They will talk to them, they will laugh with them. They might be in handcuffs, but they still treat them with dignity and respect, which is something I really, took to heart. And also social media, Pete. I love social media. I watch a lot what's working for jurisdictions. I love your social media presence. So I'm always watching it. I'm creeping around watching it because I really love the way that you can reach out and really, bring people in that have, I think, code enforcement and probably a lot of things. We've just been fragmented over the years, and now is our time to really, uh, become like one group and a hive mind where we kind of think the same and we see the same. And yours is always so dynamic, Pete. I love the way you present it. It's just really great.
And it's funny because you said that whole thing about code enforcement. Hey, you're kind of like Superman and Batman. Hey, your mom's Martha too. Wow, and it's one of those things. But I think I love inviting people like yourself on here that have a
Thank you.
true passion for code enforcement. We have the same values. We're really serious about our profession. We love our profession. We love what we do. Serving the communities is like our jam. I'm not here about negativity. It's
No.
all, we just want to bring the message of code enforcement to the masses. And I think having people like you, Rachel, I mean, we just love it. I
Yeah.
I can't say, we just love it.
Oh yeah, I'm sitting here in awe today. You know, we talk about persistence, and I'm sitting at my very first board meeting for the ICC Colorado chapter, which I very much inserted myself into because we want to collaborate more. We want to get in there, right? And I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm just in awe of everything that you do. I'm in awe of your persistence. I love it because that's just what I am. You know, like I said, trying to insert myself in a world that we do see collaboration, but we are an industry that's so pocketed off when really we're one. So having you on today is just a breath of fresh air. I'm just in awe of everything that you do. And thank you for what you bring to this organization.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually have learned a lot from you guys. And, it doesn't mean that we don't get tired, and there are days where we are like, oh man, this is tiring. But, just keeping going and really, feeling the pride that I feel working for my organization. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of being a county employee. I'm very proud, even at my days that I'm tired, I'm still proud of what I do. I'm proud of what code enforcement officers do. I'm proud of the differences that we make, even small differences. They're huge to someone. And I'm just proud. And I'm so thankful that you guys had me here. I mean, anytime I can go and just talk about cannabis, talk about my jurisdiction, I feel like super lucky. I'm the lucky one. I'm lucky. Thank you for letting me blast this out to the space, the internet.
It's absolutely been a pleasure. And I have to say a quick shout out too. We have a couple of really awesome guests in our chat, a current ICC International board member, past board member, Mr. Applegate, Mr. Sayers, for them to come on this show and really want to hear what we have to say, is empowering. And it charges me up to continue going on, with your passion, all of our passion together, and the fact that we do have that support from those big wigs over there. It means something, and it's quite powerful. So proud too.
And then we have a lot of guests lined up, and we try to bring in people that really have a passion for what we do, and it's just having you in our presence, it's an awesome feeling. I know you always tell me you're in awe of me, and we're in awe of
I
you.
am.
We are in awe of you, Jennifer. You're amazing.
Thank you. I'm just lucky. I'm blessed. I if you could say that, I just feel I get to do a lot of fun stuff, and I get to make a difference as much as I can, and I'm really thankful, I guess, is the way it is.
I love it. And we are thankful for all the guests that joined us as well today. I'll let Pete wrap it up here in a second, but I did want to also speak to one of the comments that I just think is amazing here in our chat. And it comes from a gentleman, Alex Coyne. Hopefully I said that right. But basically he says, we, code enforcement, will never know how many lives we have either improved or saved. It's not a glamorous job by any means, but it is so important. And we wish more municipalities understood that and really embraced that. So thank you for that comment, Alex. We really appreciate that. And thanks for all of our guests on today.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Well, with that, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And if you want more information on cannabis, please reach out to me. Email us at codeenforcementeducators.com. Free resources. You can watch the copy of this stream again and show it to your jurisdiction if you want some more information. With that, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Have a wonderful Friday, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Ms. Morris.